Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have Brianna again with us on this webinar. She doesn't really need any introduction, but this is our third webinar, isn't it, Brianna?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're already getting sick of my face, but
You actually bring it. I like it. Even the questions like you ask, it kind of makes me nervous. I'm like, oh my God, do I know the answers to these? Let's see.
well, let's we'll try and put you on spot again. But no, so uh, uh, Brianna is a very experienced entrepreneur and operator in this space. So she started her company, scaled it, sold and exited the company. So, again, in this industry, exits and sales are M&A is not really very common. So, she went through that journey. Then she started Thriversity, where she does a lot of training. And on top of it, now she has recently joined a completely new space, PFS, professional financial search, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So over the course of last 1 year, we've had very interesting conversations with Brianna. And what has happened is every time we pick up a topic, something comes up and we never have the time to kind of dig into it. And yeah, so that's essentially, this is the third conversation that we are having. Because in the last conversation, one of the topics was, hey, how do we hire? So many mistakes that we are making in hiring. And that's one of the biggest challenges in terms of scaling. So we alluded a little bit to this in the very first webinar as well, where Brianna spoke about, how she liked to hire, how she liked to promote, right? How did she make team leads, sort of the team structure and things like that. So here we are going to focus about hiring and scaling uh, a top-notch recruiting team. Quick housekeeping announcement. We have a Q&A section in the Zoom. So if you see on the Zoom screen down below, you will see a Q&A section. So whatever questions you have, please put them there. And at the end of it, we will go through all of your questions, have about 10 to 15 minutes dedicated to Q&A. And yeah, let's get this cracking. All right. So, Brianna, there are multiple schools of thoughts, right? And one of the biggest questions is whenever you're scaling for the first time, do I hire young, maybe fresh graduates, maybe people, very freshly out of university, right? With a lot of hunger, a lot of energy, but maybe not a lot of experience. Is there a right way for me to scale, right? Or should I just go after more experienced professionals who can hit the ground running and can start billing from second, third month onwards, right? What do you think is the right approach for somebody who's just crossing? So we'll take an example, right? Let's say you are 4 people just within your network, people that you always knew, hired those 4 people. You're about, let's say, anywhere between 800,000 to $1 million in annual revenue. Want to go scale up from there? What's the right approach?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in fresh talent, but that doesn't necessarily mean straight out of school. I had 2 incredible performers. Actually, I had 3 notable ones. 4 actually. Sorry, 4 notable performers that were in completely different industries and they were close to their 40s. So, and they were hungry. One was a single mom, one was a fisherman, which is totally crazy.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I took a chance on that one, like on paper, you're kind of like, what were you thinking that day? But I have the same interview process for everyone. I think I did a good job at that I made sure that biases were removed and we made sure that what we tell our clients, for example, on how to interview is what we did. So did some people sneak in the cracks? Sure. Yeah. Because my bias tends to be energy. So when you're talking about energy and fresh and hungry, if someone's in front of me that has all that, I'm mesmerized, because I'm oh my God, this is great. But you have to dissect that and think about what's their work ethic. Is this just a show? And then there's an extrovert, so there's so many things to be built there. But I really like fresh recruiters because the point is, why did they leave their industry or their agency in the first place? Why weren't they making money before? Why are they joining me? Now I could have a big ego and think, oh, well, it's because I'm the best and they want to work with the best, but like, what's the real reason? What's the real reason why agency recruiters are jumping? And if they're jumping, why haven't they started their own agency? Is all of my thought processes. So I think you think about like the ROI on that, and a lot of agency owners tend to be like, no, I want someone proven. I don't have time to train, but I think you don't have time not to.
Sure. I hear you. I hear you. But here is a counter to it, right? Like, so I hire somebody fresh, right? Like I have a higher risk of them not working out, right? Like, so if I'm looking at this from this perspective, my ramp up period, right? Like, so essentially the period for which we are taking a loss because they are not yet billing more than what they cost, right? Like the cost of the seat, they are not yet billing more than that, increases compared to, let's say, somebody who can probably knows the industry, knows how this works, and can probably hit the ground running. What do you think there?
I think that, first of all, you have to assume that you are losing money for 3 to 4 months, like,
Sure.
period. Unless someone's bringing in a book of business, like actual clients, which is hard to do because, I mean, I know that there's, we don't have technically non-competes before, but you can't work with your same clients. Like that's a legit thing. You can't take your clients over. And if you do take a couple of clients, it's like, again, maybe 2 clients you have because they reached out to you. There's like all of those things, right? But yeah, unless they have clients that they're walking in with that are ready to already hire, I don't think that they're going to hit the ground running any faster. I think the questions are, how much time on either experience or junior is this person ready to spend with me? Because in the first 3 to 4 months, you have to expect that you're going to work well over 40 hours. And if you can't, then I think that's where the loss comes from. So I think like the expectations there have to be really important. And then you have to think about, again, how much did this current experienced recruiter make last year? And how did they make it? So did they make it because it was their own clients or because they were just filling roles? If they made it because they were just filling roles, still, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have this big book of candidate business. So then you have to ask yourself, is what they did before completely the same as what you do? So
Sure.
could I open up their LinkedIn, look at all of their network and say every single candidate in there is exactly who we place? So the only thing, because I have taken an experienced recruiter before and that has done well. The only thing I can say there is that it has to be the same. And she was an internal recruiter that worked
Yeah.
at Airbnb. So she completely placed the same people, just not at an agency.
Sure.
And she was like, oh my God, wait, you're telling me I can do the same job, but if I do it faster, then I can make how much more money? So that was the difference. And that's why I think she really worked out. So I always think too, like in agency recruiters, we get tired. The hustle's nonstop. Like if you're actually really good at your job, there's a nonstop hustle. Like we don't really like take time off there. So then you have to ask yourself, is this person tired? Now, I'm here on the other side of it right now, which I think is why when you asked me to do this conversation, I think it's interesting, because technically I'm the old dog in this seat that I just told myself not to hire, right?
Mhm.
So is there exceptions to every rule? Yeah, but let me tell you, like I haven't been in this seat where I've been a straight full-blown individual contributor. Like I have to constantly remind myself I'm here to build a bank account, not an opinion, because I came in with I have no clients. I've never worked in this industry. So my candidates, so I live and die by the agency I'm working at's clients, right? Because I'm not a client holder yet. And so I'm like, so I'm now motivated more than ever to go get my own clients. So now when I trained, and so what I recommend with every agency owner and every recruiter out there is have the mentality that you're not here just to fill seats. You're here to also get clients, because that will be the fastest way that ROI will come from both sides. And so if you're an agency owner, you have to teach your people how to do biz dev. Because typically, and I would love to hear in the comments if we have any agency owners here, typically the agency owner is the best person at biz dev. They're the ones that are like making it rain. They still close the most money. So I would love to know if we have any agency owners here that they're not the top biller. So
That will be hard. Yeah, that will be hard to find.
yeah. So I ended up removing myself from being the top biller, probably, if I have to really think about this, maybe 4 years before I sold. And
Still pretty mature, right? Like you said that you were still, I mean, yeah, I was still then a pretty mature business by then.
oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So to walk away and say I'm no longer going to be the one that holds this team's revenue was a mental challenge for sure. It was an ego challenge, but it was the right decision, I think. But I didn't get out of the game. I just made sure that I wasn't the one bringing in the most revenue, which means I was the one that was mentoring and training, but still doing. So it's not easy.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You've opened essentially two Pandora's boxes, right? So the very first thing you said had my hiring process, right? And then you said 3 to 4 months, you're taking the loss, live with it. So we will kind of dive into both of those.
Mhm.
So you mentioned that you always had a bias for energy, right? Like when you are, looking for people. I think that kind of comes into the kind of culture that you are trying to build, and the cultural fit that your agency has. But help us understand, right? Like, what was broadly your recruiting process? And right, like, how did you, a lot of times, right, like energy, right? Like, person might just be, great at having a lot of energy in the interview does not really translate into actual outcome, actual work, right? Like, so how did you design your hiring process?
Yeah, by always putting people on the spot. And I also gave them a recruiting challenge. And you're probably thinking,
Mhm.
they're not recruiters. Why would you give them a recruiting challenge? The whole point is, I want to see how people think and I want to see how resourceful they are. Because the worst employees that I've ever had are the ones that wait for me to say something. I want people to ask for forgiveness, not permission. I say that all the time. I even tell my kids that. Okay. It's like, maybe that's not a good thing. But it's like, I want hardcore doers. I would rather deal with their mistakes and slow them down than try to speed them up. So I would send something that I told them, I need this to take 10 to 15 minutes. And here's your scenario. Here's your job description. Here's the type of companies I don't want people from. Go find me 3 profiles on LinkedIn. Keep in mind, it's regular LinkedIn. They don't have recruiter, right? Because I do think you can source through regular recruiter. I mean, at LinkedIn. I said, go find me 3 people and tell me why you think these 3 people would fit this job description.
Yeah, great. So you're putting them on spots, trying to see how resourceful they are, and figuring out, can this think from the first principles and justify their reasoning, right? Like, even if it's, yeah, I like that, right? Like, even if you can make a completely wrong assumption if you don't know anything about the industry, but
Yeah.
that's fine, make a wrong assumption, but after that, right, like, you made the wrong assumption, but the next steps that you made with that wrong assumption, if they are logical, it makes sense. I think, I'm not sure if everybody here knows this, but this is a very, very similar tactic that almost all management consulting interviews choose, right? So they will put you on ask a very random question. I remember being asked, yeah, how many windows do you think exist in Mumbai? And I was like, what is, yeah, I basically, right, like, I just made some assumptions that these many homes, these many offices, right, like, based on population and yada yada yada. But like, that's what they were trying to figure out, right? I took a very random problem, I was able to break it down and try and get to an answer.
I always asked, why is a manhole round? And people would really be like, what? I'm like, and the answer is just so it doesn't fall. So it doesn't fall. That's the actual answer. But like, it takes people by like, what are we even talking about here? I'm like, the construction manhole. So yeah, so that's what I do. But I think also with this challenge, this like email challenge that I give them, I wanted to look for communication. How is their communication skills via email? Because that's like a really big deal. Like,
Yeah.
can I get a vibe through email? And then also, I want to see if they have any fighter instincts in them. So, like, as a recruiter, I think we can all agree that we're constantly fighting for clients and for candidates. We fight on both sides of things. We have to negotiate constantly through email. And so I wanted to see if they could essentially fight for their candidates to be right for this job, even though they didn't know anything about it. Especially I think, I lived in a tech world, forever. So software engineering, like, even you give a good recruiter that doesn't do a tech job and they're like, what the hell? So you can imagine that when you give someone totally fresh who's done not even a recruiter, they really might break down. And so that's what was really important to me. And then the time of it was also important because it's hard to work as a recruiter, or it's hard to train a recruiter that thinks too much, which I know sounds like a little crazy, as we just said.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. You want bias for action.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it's like we don't have time for that. So whenever I train, I always train off of speed. So I mean, I talk fast anyways, right? But I will tell them, I'm like, hey, tell me to slow down if you want. And although that's a tricky question, the more people have me slow down, the more I'm like, this might not work for you. Even though I tell them, like, I give them the safety to do that, but it's like, you have to just keep moving. Like the whole, Dory, just keep swimming, because you're going to fail over and over again. The person that anyone talks to that's totally fresh for the first 3 weeks is going to be wrong. You might get one right every week, but it's going to be wrong. And I have to tell you why it's wrong. Da, da, da. I mean, I'm going through this right now. So my boss is funny. He was like, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong all the time. I go, let's bring it, because it's going to make me closer to being right. Oh, and he's still telling me I'm wrong every single day. It's like, okay, here we go. But if you can't like smile through that, then it's not going to work. It's like, the question is, are you frustrated? Yeah, sure, I can be frustrated, but my frustrations aren't going to stop me. So I think that it just all depends on how you look at, like, words and lingos and stuff. But yeah, communication's key.
I hear you. I hear you. Perfect. So I think let's move to onboarding and making sure that what should we do in that first first maybe 16, 30, 60, 90, 120 days, right? Like, to make sure that we are, setting up the newest members of our team for, success. And I think you're a great person to ask this question, right? Like, for not just because you've done that and scaled companies, but also you also have so much experience doing trainings, like post the exit, right? Like, so from both perspectives, Brianna, right? What did your onboarding plan look like? And if you go the path of, I'm going to, you know, go, I'm going to go hire people who don't really have a lot of recruiting experience and take a bet on them, what should be my training roadmap as well?
Yeah, it might even be similar than experience. Like, I'll cut some of the crap with the experience, but first and foremost, I need the recruiters to know why we're needed and to know why we get paid so much. And in reality, it's not that much. So I really get it through their heads, because I'm a big believer that if anyone thinks 20 to 30% of someone's salary is a big check, we need to think again. So I really ingrain in the heads as to what every single person we place at a company does for that company. And the speed that we can do it. And if they don't have this person, what happens? So I spend a lot of time on that. I also spend a lot of time on letting them know what's wrong with the recruiting industry, because there's lots of things wrong, right? You can Google what a recruiter is, and it's not going to be nice things. So I let them know what's wrong so they know what's right, because that's super important to me. The respect, the reputation, all of those things are really important to me. I'll go down all the things where people misstep, why recruiters are not successful. So I'm going to give them all of that. I'm also going to let them know they need to learn 5 clients of ours every other day. So, I mean, I guess we'll just take it away that they need to know 10 of our clients per week.
Sure.
At any given moment, we have 50 clients. So it all depends on how many clients you have, right? But they also looked at our data. So I let them know, this is how many people we've placed at every single one of these clients. This is how long it took. This is the people that we placed there. I need you to find common denominators for me. Like, that's the very first thing I did when I joined my new agency. I said, give me all of your last placements last year. And I have this whole Excel spreadsheet, and I found common denominators, and that's where I started. Because, to your point, is new people can sometimes take longer for the ROIs. But if you give them the data that only comes with experience, then you're helping them. I think that's like the key, and where people get it wrong is you have to train them with all of your brain power, with all of the things that you know about the industry for the last 18 years, which is difficult because lots of recruiters only get good with experience. So you have to find a way to say, how can I get my experience to them faster?
Sure. Yeah, that's very important. So So they are looking at data, they're learning about clients, and they're looking at all the past placements, and they are trying to find patterns in that data, right? Like, hey, you know what? Our client, let's say Airbnb, really likes to hire from, let's say, Yale, grads from Yale, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
so next time if I have Airbnb, I'm going to probably pitch somebody from Yale. Just, bringing random examples over here.
Mhm.
But so first they start understanding, what are the patterns, right? Like what's so while they are doing that, right? Like I'm guessing this is probably first couple of weeks that they have started.
Yeah, while they're doing that, and so like we definitely time block for sure. I believe in time blocking, where basically it's like let's do something mindless and let's do something where it takes a lot of brain power. I like to like flip that up, right? So after they've looked at the 5 companies, they've used all their brain power. I want them now to add connections to their LinkedIn. Or I should say, build their LinkedIn, like first thing foremost, right? Like LinkedIn is built the very first day. And then you start to add connections and you start to basically give them, again, best case scenarios, right? Because as you get longer into your career and where things have to like you're just like moving like crazy and you're not thinking as much, a lot of bad habits come into place. So I actually also tell them all of my bad habits. I tell them all of the team members' bad habits. So I really believe in one, you have to have thick skin. Right. So like if another question actually I ask is I'll ask them if they're given their food at a restaurant or a drink and it's wrong or it's bad, do they send it back? I want them to say yes, because that means again they're a fighter, and that means they don't
Yeah.
settle. And I've been a waitress, I've been a cocktail waitress and a bartender, so it's like I know that that sucks, but I also know that you should get what you pay for. So it's that same kind of like mentality. And I think all of that stuff is really, really, really important. So yeah, so they'll be doing connections. They'll find out their why. Why did I join as a recruiter? Why am I here sitting across from you wanting to be a recruiter? Why am I putting my profile together? And most people are like, because I didn't have any other option, or because this was the fastest way to make money, or it always comes down to kind of money and lack of opportunity, I think, is what typically, or very rarely someone said, oh, my friend makes a lot of money as a recruiter, so I will, but it's still money, right? So not many people will actually come into recruiting because they want to help people. We end up saying that, right? Because that's what we actually do. But I don't know if that's why people got into it, And
In
I
all
would,
fairness, yeah.
yeah, like I want to really talk to that person who really became a recruiter to do that. But the why is, why do you want so much money? Why do you want to make 100 when the rest of your, everyone else is going to school still? Like what? Why do I want to hear all of these whys and then figure out, okay, how can we translate that into this is why you do what you do? And it's fine if it's just money, but why do you need money? Why do you want money? Like, let's talk those things through. Money gives you freedom, right? Okay, great. Well, don't you want to now help other people get raises to give them the same freedom? So just trying to relate things on a human being standpoint, I think is really important. And it's also part of the training because people want to work with who they like. So you have to develop a LinkedIn profile that our people will like. And you will like not just be the run of the mill recruiter that's reaching out to them because they're getting 50 messages a day. So all that matters. And then additionally, last but not least, because I got lots of things here, but I teach them how to sell themselves as a solution. So that also goes with biz dev. Even though they're not doing biz dev their very first day, because I believe in learning candidates first, they will be doing biz dev pretty soon. So they need to learn how to sell themselves as a solution to a candidate and to a company. So I role play all the time. And again, if I would never hire a recruiter that can't role play with me. Now, not everyone's comfortable at first, but if they can't get comfortable with after that first month, like it's probably not going to work out.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So let me consolidate a lot of what you said, right? Like, so learn, so basically look at data, find patterns, learn clients, start building your LinkedIn, figure out your why, right? Like, and if the why is, for most people, it's going to be about, hey, you know what? I think I'm good at it. I might be good at it and it allows me to make a lot of money, but how does that translate into at a people level, right? Like, so that when you are actually speaking to another human being, you are you're able to translate that into something that they can benefit, right? Like, so they can benefit from. So understanding the why and doing the role play, right? Like, so this is time consuming. So the first thing that comes to my mind is time consuming, right? Like, so
Mhm.
how is this structured, right? Like, so from the cadence perspective, timeline perspective, help us understand that a little bit
Yeah. From my perspective as a trainer or from their perspective?
from their perspective, right? Like, so if let's say I'm a fresh new recruiter in Brianna Rooney agency, what should I expect for in my first 30 days?
Okay, yeah, fun. So bare minimum, I need them to, well, when we had a lot more emails, they'd be sending about 400 emails a week. I'd
Mhm.
say now with the market and how LinkedIn is, it's funky. I would say they're doing outreach at least to 200 people a week. So it's probably half
Mhm.
at this point. And then, of course, they're like maxing out their connections and then they're building their projects. They'll also be taking a quiz once a month. So at the end of the 30 days, 60, 90, we give them a quiz. We give them a quiz and it's actually quite robust. It goes into the recruiting aspects, it goes into our clients, it goes into how much certain fee agreements are, it goes into what the most important thing of our fee agreement is. I mean, we touch all different aspects of stuff. I'll even ask, what are the filler sentences we never do? Like,
Sure.
I get pretty nitty gritty with this stuff. So definitely that's what's happening. And then I would say that their goal is definitely for the first 2 weeks is to get on the phone with at least 3 people, like bare minimum, like that's like for sure. Right? You need 3 people. And then I want to make sure that by the end of the 30 days that you have what I call an onsite. So it is like the final round. We want to get someone to final round by that point. So there is definitely still like a lot of sourcing going on and they're getting on the phone with as many people as possible, even sometimes my own people. Like if they're like not getting messages back at the speed that we're wanting them to, which could be, who knows, especially with this market's a little funky, right? Then I'm going to have them get on the phone like with my person or someone else's person because they have to get it or they have to hear me on the phone. I think with remote right now, and I know that people love remote. I know. I will say though, I think agency is hard to do remote if you're not having high touch with your people and you're not having them on the phone listening to you or listening to the other leaders of recruiting, because when you're in office and you're learning, you get to listen to so many conversations. You get to hear and live through other people's experiences. So the challenge I think that agency owners have and even fresh recruiters have is they don't get that same interaction and vibe. So I know at our agency, my CEO does a really great job of letting us in Zoom links or letting it in Zoom calls. He'll be like, hey, everyone, I'm doing like this prep call. I'm doing a closing call. Feel free to join. Obviously we're silent. No, they don't know we're there, right? But that is a great way to simulate being in office. And
Sure.
so I think that that's something also to think about, that like if I were to build again, I would have to really think about whether or not I'd be building remote. So then I'm going to contradict like what you asked me earlier. It will be a lot more difficult to train fresh recruiters remotely.
Yeah.
So it takes
True.
its own set of, now I would be set up to do that now because I have courses and I have like all sorts of stuff. And, you can make your own chat GPTs that, can help respond to recruiters asking the same questions over and over again, because it does get super time consuming. But I do think that training fresh recruiters remotely is very difficult. So that's my contradiction.
I hear you. In terms of the structure, right? Like, do I have like, is my manager in charge of my training, or do I have like a not really a recruiting manager, but maybe another successful recruiter who's doing well that I'm shadowing, right? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah. So I love that you asked that. So first of all, shadowing, I love. I absolutely think that they should shadow the highest performer. But here's the thing. If your highest performers have all the bad habits, probably not a good idea, right?
Yeah, yeah. And in a lot of cases, I have seen that to be true.
Yes.
No, and they are your top performers. There is no way that you're, if you tell them, hey, you know what, instead of this, you should be doing it that. Say, you know what, I'm making it rain. Just don't bother me. Let me do my thing. And it's
Yes.
fair. That's fair.
Yes. So I am a giant believer that your top performer should never be your trainer
Mm,
because they're the exception.
Yeah.
Typical top. So I think as an agency owner, you want these super high performers, right? Well, let me hit you on that one. You want probably more secondary good performers, so here's your high and here's your seconds. You want a lot of these people and only a couple of the highs. And I know you're probably thinking, why would you say no to revenue? It's because technically high performers don't always bring in the highest revenue. They sometimes cost the most because you give out more commission because you want to keep them. They give you a headache because they don't ever want to do what you say. To your point, I'm making it rain, shut up. Which, sure, like you are making it rain. You go do what you want to do, right? So they're constantly going against what you're trying to build, which is really difficult. And then also high performers, they typically are not capable of training or want to train or want to manage. They're lone wolves. So those lone wolves are great for your revenue, great for your reputation, but they're not great at building teams. So I try to strive for like those seconds. Like I want people who are consistent, who are loyal, who play by my rules, but still can have that capability of making it rain. So there's definitely some takeaways on when you think about that. So if you're an agency that just wants hardcore killers, then you have to make sure that you're going to be the one that's training them.
Sure.
For sure.
Sure. Makes sense. No, this makes sense. But then, it's very difficult to scale maybe beyond a headcount of maybe 7, 8, 10. After that, training everybody yourself is just, there's asking so much.
Here's what I do. Here's what I recommend. First of all, you always train 2 people at once. Never less than that. I would never hire one person at a time. That would be like the worst idea. The highest I got, and I would do it again, is 6 at a time because 50% don't work out, period. That's why I always do 2, right? I always do the multiples too. But 6 is really cool because you're getting this whole pod and they're feeding off of each other. There's this competition going on and there's no waste of my time or anyone else that's helping me train. So I know that my 3 months of training is super well spent because I'm betting on 6 people. I mean, it's like, I was just in Vegas, so it's like odds, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your odds? And then therefore, all of a sudden, that's really worth my time is
Sure.
6 people. And honestly, it doesn't take any more time than 2. So if you have the bankroll and the clients, let me make sure you have the clients and the need, I would train 6 at a time.
Understood. So have somebody that I'm shadowing, I am doing role plays, I am kind of learning it on the job, right? Like so at the end of first month, I'm trying to get at least one candidate to final interview round, getting people on the phone with me. When do I get hit with the targets? You can say, I'm on my, the first week first month or 2 might be my honeymoon periods. When do I get a quota or a target on my back?
Like that you're going to be shipped out?
No. So not shipped out, but basically, hey, you know what, right? Like so first month, your target is get one candidate to interview. You're good to go. Second month, hey, this month you're supposed to be billing, let's say $10,000, right? Like third month, you're supposed to be billing. So when is the first month when I have billing targets on?
I actually start with their billing targets like immediately. So there is nothing lost in translation. I just tell them what's normal. So what's normal is and expected is that you make a deal by the end of your first 3 months. If you have not made a deal by the end of your 3 months and you don't have at least a couple of offers, which means just declined offers, then there's something wrong in my opinion. But I better make sure that it's not something wrong with my camp. Lots of times you could hire on and maybe your clients suck. So okay, let me take a step back. Here's where I think it goes wrong. For a new person, they should never be the ones thinking or figuring out who they're working with, like what kind of roles, like what roles they're filling and what clients is their focus. That comes from me. So I need to tell them, I need to give them the focus. I need to say, here's the 3 clients you're working on, and I'm putting you on this because there's overlap and it's really just one big search, but I want you to focus on these 3 clients. Now, if they get people for these 3 clients I told them to, and these 3 clients go silent or pause or they're really difficult, then whose fault is it? It's mine. So I think that's also why a lot of agencies get it wrong, is because they let their people pick whatever roles they want. They're like, hey, here's all the roles, here's all our clients, you go pick. A new person, that's difficult. And I don't think they should be given that responsibility. So yeah, the targets, everybody has the same targets, and I mean, obviously the high performers are doing their own thing, right? But I always say like, there's a document that says, hey, when you first start, I need you to start closing a role every other month. Like that's how we're getting you. And in tech, it's different, right? Like I'm sure with other industries, it moves faster. But tech, it's like, okay, every other month we're closing for the first 6 months. That's what I expect from you. Okay. But I expect a lot more activity, but that's what I need to close. I don't go based off of dollars. I go based off of placements, because I know my average placement is 37,000. So that should all come out in the wash. Like we don't like go too much lower, there's outliers, right? But in theory, I don't care about the actual money, because it comes. But then I'm going to say after 6 months, I needed to start closing a deal a month.
Makes sense. So until then, you're building your pipeline, laying the groundwork, and from there, you just kind of you've ramped up. That makes sense. Now, how do you tell whether somebody's onboarding and training is going well or not, right? Like, what are some of those signs that you look for? And are there any metrics that you are tracking for the first 3 months, for the first 6 months, that are different from usual metrics that you're tracking for everybody else, that allows you to intervene, allows you to stay ahead of any potential problems?
This isn't different from anybody else, but the thing that I care the most about is, one, their intakes. So the first month, I'm paying very close attention to what their intakes look like. Are they digging? Because a lot of recruiters don't dig. They're like waiters or waitresses. They're just like, oh, what do you want? Great. Okay, sure. We'll get you that. Right. So I want to make sure that they are up to par. They're meaty enough. They're the right format we need. So the logistics of it, I need to make sure are really correct. But more importantly, after that first month, in the second month, especially the third, I'm paying attention to the conversion rate. So I want to make sure that that 80% of the people they're getting an intake from, so that first call, I say yes to. So if they're talking to people that I'm like, no, and it's more than 20% is going in the trash, then they're fake busy. If they don't adjust that and it's month 3 where they're still not in an 80% conversion, then we have a problem.
Sure.
And that means that they're either just not retaining, they're not listening, or they're just fake busy and they just don't care. A lot of recruiters are fake busy, which is mind-boggling. When you're commissioned, it's like, why would you be fake busy? But there's something not clicking. So like for myself, I'm looking at my conversion rate and I'm not happy with my conversion rate. I'm like, okay, holy moly, like what am I missing? Like I'm obviously, I need to take a step back and I need to learn a little bit more and read a little bit more about the candidates I'm talking to, because there's something that wasn't clicking. So I had to slow down to speed up. And so that's what I would do for the people in the second and third month, is to figure out, why in the God's name are you getting on the phone with these people? You already, like, your first month, fine. I'm getting you on the phone with everybody. Your second month, third month, not so much. So that's a big thing for me. Another thing that I didn't really talk about was I have what I call like this resume speed test. And you could do it with LinkedIn profiles too, but I will give them loads of resumes and I'll sit down with them. And I've done this virtually, of course, but we'll sit down. So we'll have the resume on the screen and I need them to tell me all the red flags, all the green flags, how much they think they make and where they would send this person. And I time it every single one. And I need them to get down to 30 seconds to do all of those things per resume. But I also do that because I want to hear if they're thinking like a client holder. So the fastest I can get my recruiters to think like someone that has clients, the better. Yeah. And they're going to be the most successful, because there's definitely a spot for just pure sourcers. Sure. But in my opinion, I don't want them. Not on my team. I think it works out for some teams, but it doesn't work out in my opinion. I want people who could do full cycle, but not just do full cycle, but want to do full cycle. So I had lots of great employees who were like begging me to train them on biz dev. And I wouldn't train them on biz dev until I knew that they knew what a great candidate was and why. Because otherwise, like the best way to get clients is to pitch candidates, right? Well, if you don't even know why a candidate's great, then how are you going to pitch them? Secondly, I needed to make sure that they got really good at rejection. Like that rejection didn't ruin their day. So I would also sit down and like think of different affirmations, manifesting. Like I'd get really deep into like the mindset, because I think you have to build the mindset of a recruiter before you can just let them, fly. Because what's going to happen, and you're not going to know, is your recruiter behind the scenes is melting down. And lots of times they're not going to come tell you, right? So those are other things that I think is missed a lot. Now, with experienced recruiters, that is something I dig into before I hire them. So before you hire experienced recruiters, you have to know what breaks them down. And you have to know like when that happens, what's the longest they've gone without a deal, and how did they dig themselves back? So I definitely would suggest a different interview process for newbies and experienced. I think those are two different games you're playing.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So yeah, I think one takeaway that I would have is that, it's obvious that you will measure the activity metrics, right? Like, hey, are you doing the number of whatever, right? Like intake calls, submissions, and all of that. But I would also measure ratios, conversion rates, and all of that to and really dig in, maybe even listen in on their intake calls to, be more focused on the quality matrix rather than just the quantity matrix, at least in the beginning. Once they know what they're doing, they have hired them for the right kind of drive, right kind of motivation. So they're going to take care of it. What's the typical attrition rate that you expect annually? I asked because I was speaking to a leader the other day, and he told me that, you know, one of the previous businesses that he worked with, he basically, and 80% of the office changed within 3 years. I was like, oh, yeah, that's big, right? Like that's insane. That's like, but typically from that means that 80% of the office changing within 3 years. I think you're doing something terribly wrong. But if you're not assuming you're doing things right, what's the kind of attrition that you should expect? Because I think when people are doing the math of scaling up, one thing that people forget, hey, a lot of those good people that you're training will leave. And that's just the nature of the business. How should they think about benchmark themselves?
Well, I mean, average attrition across just as far as industry standards goes, it's at about like 11, 12%. So I think you have to just assume that that's happening. But if you're in growth mode, I assume that every person I hire that year, not the people I have, but the new people, half of them are going to be gone. Now, so 50% is crazy, but I'm only talking about new hires. Now, if we're just talking about the people that I've had, I got really lucky. I think it matters how you handle things. So I very rarely had people leave me by choice. So I mean, if you're having more than 10% leave you that you've trained, again, like that seems high to me, because they're on commission and you have to look at that and you have to incentivize. And it doesn't always have to be more commission. There can be all sorts of things that you can incentivize them for. So if the question would be like, why are they leaving? Are they leaving because they're not making the money? Then there's something wrong internally. Or maybe they're just not good and you should have fired them. So I definitely think that there's like some pushback there. But I know that I would talk to, sometimes monthly, but normally I would talk to the recruiters every 3 months, and we would take a look at their commission sheet. And we would say, okay, well, here's how much you're going to take for the next 3 months. And here's what could happen if you don't do this. But let's take a look at your activity. Statistically wise, you should probably close XYZ, which would hold, we always had money conversations. Like I always made sure that they were in it. I always treated them like I guess like you would say like an owner. So I want a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. And that's also who I always hired for. So I would also let my people know that if you ever wanted to start a new business, come to me. I'll be your first investor. So I always let them know that it was okay to want more. That's why I started my own. Well, I started for a different reason. I didn't realize all of the things I've started for, but I started because I didn't like what was going on in my firm, right? So I definitely made sure that we had a really great vibe, culture. It was positive, but we were realistic. So the culture, no one was ever going to leave me for that. But I
Mhm.
also made sure that no one was going to leave me because of money. So we would always have money conversations. That's why I tell you, like, I might have gotten caught my pants down when it comes to the really high achievers because I would give them more. Now, here's the thing though. I would make them work for it. It's not like they would come in my office and be like, "Hey, I need XY commission." I'd be like, "Okay, if you close this amount by this amount, I'll give that to you." Or, or we would negotiate, right? But I definitely I would bribe. I guess that's the best way to put it. My employees were always like bribed. There was always some kind of carrot they were chasing, always some competition, always some trip I was giving away. We always made it fun like that. So
Mhm.
I think that there should be no reason if you have a good culture and they're making the money and you're appreciating them, they should never want to leave. The only reason they should want to leave is because they're getting out of the industry. So
Gotcha.
I feel pretty strongly about that. So if you have high turnaround, there's definitely something going on. Like, and it shouldn't be.
Makes sense. No, that makes complete sense. Thank you so much, Brianna.
Awesome. Thank you. Always appreciate
Thank you so much, Brianna. Thank you again.
it. All right. We'll see you soon.